welcome to Impact 2025, our continuing conversation where we talk about all types of different topics. We talk about current events, where we talk about religion, where we talk about race, where we talk about whatever is going on. This is your opportunity to join us in that conversation. So feel free to type your questions and your comments into the comment section, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, you can just type your comments in there, type your questions in there. They will pop up on the screen and we will address them. So feel free to be a part of the conversation. This should not be a one-way thing. This should be, hey, here's how I feel about it, or hey, you sound crazy, or hey, I got a question about what you just said here. And so again, feel free, put in your comments, your questions into the comment section. As a reminder, I want to let everybody know about the other offerings that we have. On Thursday, we have Thursday Thirst. That's our weekly Bible study. That starts at 7 o'clock on Thursday nights, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. On Sundays, we have worship service that is at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can see that on Facebook and YouTube, and also the address that is right here on your screen if you are in the Highland Springs, Virginia area. And then on Tuesdays, that is today, at 7 o'clock, we have a time of prayer from 7 to 7:45. That is your opportunity to pray with everyone else that's in the ministry. So sometime between 7 and 7:45, please have a time of prayer, and you will be praying with others. And then, of course, where you are right now, Impact 2025. Another week has gone by. A whole bunch of current events have gone by. Plenty of topics to talk about, as we always have. But one topic that I think we need to talk about a little bit is, how do we talk about what's going on? Especially when we're talking about young people. And so today is a young people day. When we're talking about kids, when we're talking about our family members, our nieces, our nephews, our younger cousins, when we're talking about our children, our sons, our daughters, when we're just talking about younger people that we may come across at church or youth programs or different things like that. With everything that's going on in the world, how do we discuss these issues? For example, we had the Charlie Kirk situation where he was shot and killed. Now, I got kids. I work with the scouting program, so scouts. We got Cub Scouts. Got kids. These are Cub Scouts. They're in 3rd and 4th grade. They've seen the video of Charlie Kirk getting shot, of being assassinated. How do you have that discussion with them about, all right, this is what's going on. This is why it's going on. Here's one of the reasons that you think that people didn't like him. How are we having these discussions nowadays? This is a little different from discussions where we're having about civil rights. And I'll put that out there. It's a little easier to have a discussion, I know, for me, if I'm talking to my son or if I'm talking to younger people, when we're talking about race issues, a clear-cut race issue. When we're talking about some of the tragedies that happened in the past, and even now when we're talking about race. It was straightforward when we're having a conversation about George Floyd and about what happened to him. And we're having a conversation about Breonna Taylor. And we're having a conversation about many of the other people who lost their lives. It's a clean conversation to be like, hey, look, when you see the police, respect the police, but you need to have a healthy understanding that police are regular people, and there are good ones and there are bad ones. And the problem is you're not going to know which one they are when they approach you. And so you need to understand that. That's an easier conversation to have. But now that we're talking about kind of like weird political stuff, we're talking about Charlie Kirk, and we're talking about a person who was shot and killed, and they can see it online. And at the same time, we have to talk about the fact that some people think that he was this great person. Some people are walking around saying that he was a Christian. Some people are walking around saying some other things. And then just as many people are saying he had some horrible, horrible views. He said some horrible things. He said a lot of racist things. He does a lot of sexist things, a lot of discriminatory things. He did not say things that were aligned with Christianity, even though he claimed to be a Christian. And so you have this weird conversation. And then you're talking about people getting canceled or losing their jobs or getting suspended from their jobs by having these kind of conversations about that and about him. How do we have that conversation with our kids? Because the nuance here is when we're talking about race, you're talking about George Floyd, you're talking about Breonna Taylor, you're talking about all of the people, um, all of the issues that have popped up over the years. It's pretty clear cut for me. We're talking about race. You're talking about people who are racist and are doing racist activities. It's pretty clear cut for me. But when we're talking about a situation of, hey, this is politics. This is some people believe that these people should be able to do this, and other people believe that. You can't really say bad things, or people are people are wrapped into their politics as like it's their religion. How do we have these conversations with our kids? I can talk about my kids, or specifically my son. My son, when he goes to school, they talk about Donald Trump all the time. When my son comes home, he talks about how Donald Trump, he has some wild things like Donald Trump is trying to send all the black people to Africa. Don't know where he got that from. Donald Trump is a bad person. Like he don't, this and that. Now, of course, they're kids, and they get all these wild, they get all these wild and crazy things. But they hear what we say. They hear what's on the news, and because nowadays they have phones, they get more access to more information than ever before. Again, like I said, most of these kids have already seen the Charlie Kirk killing, which is crazy to think of. 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 7-year-olds pulling this up on the phone and being able to see it. And then they're also being able to see all the commentary that other people are talking about. And so now you don't want to sit back and just let young people minds race, so they try to figure it out themselves, because that's definitely problematic. So then it comes to, how do we have that conversation? How do we have a conversation, and then we also tie it into our faith? How do we have that conversation and tie it into the fact that we're sitting here and there's a guy that a lot of people are running around saying, hey, this guy's a Christian, but yet you can pull up clips of him saying some horrible things about black people, horrible things about women, horrible things about black women, horrible things when it just comes to people who are LGBTQ. And you're just, whether you agree or disagree with them, the horrible things he's saying about them, about how their minds work and their mental, just how do we address that? How do we address, what do you address when your child is looking at somebody and they're saying that this person was a Christian, and that that's not what Christianity looks like? That's not what Christianity sounds like. That's not what Christianity is. But then you have all these people who are just all for it. And so I think that's where we're at today. It's that weird spot of, how do we have these conversations? Because we can't, even if you thought for a second, whether you have young kids, older kids, whether you just come across kids, it's just the young generation. We're even talking 20-year-olds, people in their 20s, everything. We have to have these conversations with that younger generation. And how do we have that conversation with the younger generation? How do we have this conversation? Because you can't do it where you think, all right, well, my son's just playing video games, or my daughter she's just talking to her friends. They don't be paying attention to what's going on. It's not like that anymore. Even if they don't care about what's going on, they're going to see something salacious. They're going to be like, ooh, look at this person. He's out here shooting people. Ooh, look at this guy. He got shot in the neck. Or, ooh, let me look what's going over here at this Mormon church where this guy drove into the church and was shooting at people. I can see all of these clips of things that's going on. How do we have this conversation and we keep it respectful and we understand what's going on? Now, that's just here. They're also pulling up on their phones and they're seeing what's going on in Gaza. They're seeing kids starving. They're seeing babies that have just, bombs have just happened and the babies are bleeding out and dying. They're seeing all of these horrible pictures of what's going on in Gaza. And we still have to have that conversation. What do we do now? What I do know, the number one thing I do know that we can't ignore. We can't sit back and think it's going to work itself out. They have access to all of this information. And you can sit back and you can say, well, my son's not on Facebook or my daughter's not on Facebook. That doesn't matter. Or my son doesn't have a phone or my daughter. That doesn't matter. Because when they go to school, they pull that thing right up. All it takes is one kid to have a phone and one kid to be like, "Hey, let me show you all of this stuff." Because again, you've seen it, I've seen it. Those kids, they've seen everything. You can ask them about any tragedy or any event that's happened in the last couple of years. They've seen it. They may not remember exactly what it was, but they've seen it. Here we go. Though we are faced with issues today, our real discussion is about who we are and how we should carry ourselves. As Christians, how we treat one another, how we should deal with our enemies, how we should deal with the poor and the unfortunate. Absolutely. I think that's a good one. It's actually, I think that's where it comes into play. I think more important than ever before, we have to be sure of who we are. Because there's too many opportunities for other people to tell us who we are, more so than ever before. This is not just Sunday night news, and that's the time that you see what's going on in the world. You're constantly bombarded about what's going on. You're constantly being told right now, and kids are constantly being told about what it means to be a Christian. And so if they go online, or if they're listening to some of the craziness that's put out there by some of these extreme folk, they'll think that Christianity is a totally different thing. And so if we're not clear and firm, I think, on what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a good person, how we should treat one another, if we're not clear on it, if we haven't clearly communicated it to the younger generation, then they're going to get some weird, messed up message from their peers, from the internet, from these tragedies that's going on. I'm not getting into that whole Kirk situation and really kind of talking about it because, how do I say this in a nice way? There's no way nice to say it. Not significant to me, and so I'm not going to go and have a long conversation or go into anything. That's why we haven't been talking about him too much here. Because not significant in the sense of that wasn't something that's in our community in my ethos. That was a guy who did college campuses and things like that and just said, racist stuff. There's plenty of people who say racist stuff. But how do I have this conversation and say, look, there are a lot of people who think that's what Christianity looked like. And even though he should not have been killed, even though what happened to him was a tragedy, do not get confused. He did not represent the Christianity that we believe in. He did not represent the God that we believe in. He did not represent how we should carry ourselves and treat others. And so don't get confused when other people say that this is what Christianity looks like, because it's not. That's what whatever he thought it was looked like, but that is not what Christianity looks like. He did not represent that. And so I think we have to make sure that we hammer that home, and even hammer that home with one another. The reason this comment is really there, the reason I think that this comment is so impactful, because that's what it needs to be. We need to concentrate on who we are and how we should carry ourselves. And so if we're grounded in the right information, and we ground younger people in the right information, then there won't be any question or confusion when these things come up. The reality of the matter is we can't stop kids from seeing what's going on in the world. It's a lot of craziness going on in the world. And as they see it, they need to have the tools to be able to comprehend what's going on and be able to be prepared for what's going on, because they're going to see it. Another comment: the scripture teaches us that a clean, clear, and empty will eventually get filled. What we are going to fill it with. What are we going to fill it with? Sorry. The world is looking to fill their minds with anyone who will listen and is empty. And that's right. I think one of the things that we have to, I was in a conversation, is that before you could sit back here and you could respect journalism, and you would think, all right, well, the journalist, whether it be somebody on TV, somebody on the internet, somebody on a newspaper or wherever, the journalist felt a responsibility to those who read their stuff or listened to their stuff. They felt a responsibility to their audience. I need to, not be irresponsible and make sure that I keep my audience not safe, but make sure that I'm not being irresponsible and putting out some information that may be harmful to my audience. And even if I'm putting something out that may be a little bit controversial, make sure that it's in a way that I'm not guiding you down the wrong path. I'm putting you in a situation where you can make an informed decision, but if there's some danger there, I can kind of guide you. I have some responsibility there. Nowadays, people don't have any responsibility. You look at some of the everybody has a podcast, as they say. You look at some of the biggest shows out here. People are just out here saying whatever, bringing on whoever, just whatever words are being said. And so it's very irresponsible. Journalism, journalists will tell you like journalism is dead, but it's irresponsible. And so what people are susceptible to getting a lot of bad information now because there's no responsibility to make sure that what's being put out there is good. I'll give you an example. One of the most popular shows for young men is the Joe Rogan Experience, or the Joe Rogan Show, where he has a podcast. It's a former comedian. I guess he's still a comedian. Joe Rogan has a show. A lot of kids, young men watch it. Other people watch it too, but it's really big in that young male demographic, young 20s, young 30s. And one of the things about him is that he's not a journalist. And what he does is he'll bring anybody on there. And so when COVID was going on, he'd bring people over here on his show and he would talk to them and they would have crazy ideas and tell people to do some crazy things. But he didn't have any responsibility to what's going on. He didn't care. During the political campaign, he'd bring people on, just have them talk and say whatever they wanted to say, whether it be lies or truth. He really wouldn't check it or anything like that. No responsibility. And as a result, you have a lot of people who got good information and you got a lot of people who got bad information. And there was no responsibility of the journalist to sit back and say, well, is the information good or bad? And so you fill up, as the comment says, you can get your head filled up with a bunch of junk, with a bunch of mess. And so if you don't have something else, family, church, a strong education, which will get you to be able to have some logic and think, your head can quickly get filled with a bunch of mess and you can get fooled. And that's what I think, not just me, but I think some other people have said the same thing. That's what has occurred with a lot of young people, young men. So this comment I think is really good because we need to fill ourselves up or fill ourselves and fill others up with good information, fill them up with information and education and knowledge that when they get new stuff to be filled up with, they can decipher between what's good and what's bad. That's a good comment. And so I think that's generally what it comes down to. So the question, the dilemma, and the problem that we're having right now, I feel like, is that we have young people who are going to get all of this information. And we have to be proactive as the church. We have to be proactive as adults. We have to be proactive as people with a conscience, that we go out here and that we fill people up with the right information. Because again, it's not a situation where we can just, cover our ears and close our eyes and be like, all right, this is not going to happen. Our kids will not be exposed to this. They're being exposed to everything that's going on. So when we have these immigration raids and you're seeing immigrants, you're seeing people who are being just manhandled, being abused by ICE. They're seeing clips of that. When you're seeing the not riots, but you're seeing the protests that are going on between federal officials and then people who are protesting the immigration policies, they're seeing that. They're seeing the police and they're seeing National Guard being put out into DC and going into other cities. They're seeing that. And so they're seeing what's going on. We've already talked about Gaza. They're seeing that. They're even seeing clips from Ukraine and Russia. They're seeing that. They're exposed to everything that is going on in a way that we've never been exposed to before. Even if we could see stuff before, even when we had the internet, but you had to go to a computer and actually type it in and do all that. You don't even have to do that anymore. They just pull up Instagram and they'll just Flip, 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 flip. All of a sudden you see Gaza. Flip, flip, flip. All of a sudden you see Charlie Kirk. Flip, flip, flip. All of a sudden you're seeing immigrants being things done to them. Flip, you see a boat in Venezuela being exploded in the water. You're just seeing thing after thing after thing. Flip, and then you're seeing people talk about what Christianity is. And they're repping their craziness of Christian nationalism or some other little weird thing. And we got to fill them up with some good stuff. Otherwise, they're not going to know what's real and what's not. They're not going to know what's true and what's not. They're not going to know what's good and what's not. I mean, it's hard enough, on a normal day to know, but you're getting all of this stuff just blasted at you through Instagram and all that. And so, it's a weird situation. We have to be proactive. So when things happen, we have to talk. That's why we have this program here, but we have to pull people to the side and we have to have a conversation about it. Because if we don't talk about what's going on, even if we wait to talk about what's going on, like the comments said, people will get filled up with something else. You wait to talk to young people and we'll wait to talk to one another about what happened with Kirk, then you'll listen to what the TV has to say. You'll listen to what Instagram has to say instead of talking to what some real people have to say. And I think that's what's going to be bad. We wait to talk about immigration, and then we get all of these wild and crazy ideas going on in our heads. If we wait to talk about what's going on in these other countries or even in our backyard, wild and crazy things. And so I think that's where we're here at now, is that we have to have these conversations, especially with younger people. But we got to continue to have them with one another. We got to talk about this. And as much as people are like, man, I don't want to talk about negative stuff. It's not negative stuff. It's what's going on. But we need to be informed. We need to make sure that we talk about it because they're going to get that information from somewhere. And it's better that they get it from a good source than they get it from a bad one. All right. Well, that's it. One of the things I just wanted to talk about is the fact that we have a government shutdown right now. That means a lot of federal employees are not working. I'm not a federal employee. I don't know too many active federal employees. But I want to say to everyone who is a federal employee who's not working right now and that has some free time, let's do something good in that free time. Let's do something good with the church in that free time. Let's make sure that we, do something positive with the time that you have. Don't sit around and mope and be sad. Don't sit around waiting to go back to work. I got to be ready. Like, no. Let's go enjoy the time that you have. You don't know how long it'll be. It may be a long time. It may be a short time, but enjoy the time that you have and do something good with the time that you have. And I would say for everyone, let's do something good for the community. And so let's get with the church and let's do something nice with the time that you got. All right. That's just my suggestion. I'm not a federal employee. I don't know, but that's what I would do. Another comment, there is truth. Then there's opinions. The world we live in today tells us that we should embrace our truth. As Christians, we believe that the word of God is truth. Everything else is only opinions. All who claim to be Christian will have to answer to Matthew 25, 31, 46. When I was hungry, you fed me. Absolutely. 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 I think that's a big one that's going on right now with a lot of people. A lot of people need things. They need food. They need shelter. They need clothing. Not want, not excess, but they need things. And when we sit back as a society, when we sit back as a country, and we prioritize money or, we don't like these policies and we prioritize politics or whatever you want to call it over providing people's needs, then I don't think we're being consistent with the word of God. And for that fight that people want to have sometimes where they're saying, well, the government shouldn't be providing this, individual people should be providing this, or the government shouldn't be providing this, the church should be providing this. Look, if you take food, clothing, if you take a need away from somebody, I don't think that that's working it out. I think that that's, It's not, let me take the need away from you and then hopefully somebody else will provide. I don't think that's what God wants to do. You can't, I don't think we should be trying to take away what's already being provided. Yeah. But yeah, that's a big one. We could go down a whole other path of that. As I always say, one of the biggest lies that we've talked about is my truth. I'm just speaking my truth. You got to let her tell her truth, or you got to let him say his truth. No, there is the truth, and like this comment said, and then there's opinions. And so let's find out what the truth is, and then we can talk about how we feel about it. But you do not have your own truth. That is no such thing. If you're operating on some I'm telling my truth, then you're just up here lying. Because there's only the truth. And that's the only thing you should be looking to tell. And then you can talk about how you feel about it. You can talk about your vantage point, your viewpoint. But you can't make up your own truth. Because there's only one. All right. Well, that's it. I hope that was pretty good. I thank everybody for the comments and everything like that. Some very good ones. Very, very good ones. I want to remind people about the other things that we have. Thursday, please come. Thursday, weekly Bible study. Sundays, let me go back. Weekly Bible study at 7:00 Eastern Standard Time, Facebook and YouTube. Sundays, we have worship service. That's 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Facebook, YouTube, and in person. And then, of course, at 7, we have a time of prayer. And from 7 to 7:45. Then, of course, we have Impact 2025. Thank you for everybody who joined us. Please join us again and have a good one.